So, my name is Cassandra Chin, and I'm really happy to have you all here today. And I'm going to be talking about how you can get your kids to want to do technology. So, how many of you guys have kids? Then you're in the right place. We all want our kids to get into technology and be as passionate about it as we are. So, I'm actually a computer science student. I'm taking an online college, Colorado State University Global, so I can take classes and be at JFocus with you here today. And I've also been teaching kids workshops since I was 14, so a very long time, and a lot of different kinds of events. And one of the events which I teach at is JFocus for Kids. There was actually a kids event this Sunday, so I was really happy to be there and have this conference to support it. And I'm also a book author now. I've written Phippy's AI Friend, which is this picture book. It also has a workshop activity in it, which I'll be talking about later. And I am also just finished my new book, which called Raising Young Coders. I'll talk about that a bit later too. And I'm also running some podcast shows, and I'm doing an internship with the Linux Foundation. So I want to talk about why it actually matters to get your kids into technology at a young age. So, like, women who try AP computer science are 10 times more likely to major in it, and Black and Latino students are 7 times more likely. So, like, it shows that just by trying computer science, that's really the starter to get them to want to do computer science in the future. It's all about giving your kids the opportunity to try. And this is a graph where it shows that computer science biases start as early as at the age of 6. And you can see that the everything above the line, the horizontal line, means that the favors boys. So the kids themselves think that the computer science is really a guy thing. And you can see that as they get older, they gradually kind of think that computer science is for boys. So it's really good to get them when they're still young. So I'd say elementary school age is perfect. And that's actually when I started too. I attended kids workshops when I was in like 4th or 5th grade with my friends, and that really showed me that technology can be fun for everyone. And these are the languages which are required in schools. Like, I've taken Chinese myself in high school just to fulfill the requirement. And they also have different languages which they have kids take, like Spanish, French. But I don't think these languages are the right languages they should be teaching. They haven't really helped me in my life so far. So these are the languages which will actually matter and really help your kids in the future. So I think like there's a lot of like things in computer science, like learning about variables or classes. Like, we take it for granted, but it's almost like a language. It actually gets harder to learn it once you're a bit older. So it's really important to teach kids these fundamentals while they're still young. And a lot of our kids like to spend time on their devices. They probably all have phones, and they spend way too much time on it. But technology is also screen time, so not all screen time is necessarily bad. I want to separate screen time into 3 different categories. So there's passive screen time. That's when your kid is watching YouTube, maybe browsing social media. Maybe we're guilty of this too. And then there's active screen time, which is playing games, like playing Minecraft, for example, or maybe Roblox. There's still some like eye-hand coordination. They're learning how to type quicker. So in general, it's better. But what we really want our kids to do is learning screen time. And I would classify learning screen time as like spending time on Scratch block programming, or like any educational tool on the computer for learning coding, like making their own games. So if they find like doing Scratch fun and they want to do that themselves voluntarily, like we want them to do more learning and less of just watching YouTube. And actually, like a lot of computers have like parental controls and screen time limits, and I still think that's important because I have a 12-year-old sister, and yes, we do still have the limits, but you can actually limit the time by application. So we can stop her like general. We can even limit it to like not using YouTube during like the certain hours and only allow her to use like Scratch. So that kind of forces her to like spend more time on educational activities. So I think one of the biggest mistakes we make, even if it's subconsciously, is just not inviting our daughters and showing them technology. We often assume they don't like it, but they haven't tried it yet, so they wouldn't know. And this is a kids workshop which I taught at KubeCon. And I think what's special about this is one of the parents brought their daughters in, and because they were given the opportunity to come to that tech workshop, they were also got the opportunity to be interviewed and talk about what they learned. So I think it's really important just to like bring your daughters, include them, just treat them equally. They deserve it. Yeah, this is a typical Bay Area workshop, which I think I taught this like around in the San Francisco Bay Area about 5 or 10 years ago. And if you notice in this room, there's a lot of boys. There's one girl and one parent, but this is actually an interesting thing to me. Like, I find that in high tech places like the Bay Area or like cities with this high, lots of startups, like these workshops have more boys than girls. But if I teach a kids workshop, say like in Morocco, which I've actually been there and taught a workshop before, then the gender ratio in the class is actually about even. So somehow in the more tech central places, the divide is worse. And I want to say that computers at home actually do matter. They help when only 67% of high school students have a computer in their household, 100% of incoming technology majors have a computer. So, giving your kid a computer doesn't guarantee that they'll go into computer science, but it gives them a chance. As opposed to if you don't give them a computer, then there's a really extremely tiny chance they'll go and want to do technology. So it's really about early introductions. You just make that computer part of their life. And another thing about computer science, which I see, is assuming you have to be good in math. Like, math is not related to computer science. I never enjoyed math as a kid, but I did enjoy my computer science classes, which I find interesting. And we generally associate math as like being a smart thing, but it's like a completely different skill set than computer science. Like, I'd say computer science has a lot of creativity. Like, once you understand the language and basics, you're creating things, which it's a different skill set than math. And this was a study which showed what courses students enjoyed the most in high school. And you can see that math is at the really bottom. Not a lot of people like math. And surprisingly, computer science is at like the 50%. So a lot of kids enjoyed it. So a lot of kids who don't like math check the box for liking computer science. And also, we don't really code in assembly anymore. So, like, our programming languages today, like Python and Java, they're not as math heavy as they used to be. So, we don't actually need a strong passion for math to also love technology. And this is a bit of code from one of the kids' workshops I teach on the Raspberry Pi. This is in the Nano editor. And you can see that it's a lot of logic and it's not mathy. There's actually no equations or anything. And in this workshop, I have the kids type main.attack and it's main.whistle. And that's just a good way that I have the kids do a little bit of coding and they get a result in their little game. I've seen a lot of technical books, especially meant for late high school and college students. They try to drill into a whole bunch of computer science fundamentals, maybe even history and concepts which we don't even use anymore. I've tried these books before when I was smaller, and they didn't excite me that much. If this was my first introduction to technology, I probably would have quit a long time ago. So I don't recommend it as a first introduction. These are better books to get your kids interested in technology because they're more fun. Of course, Phippy's AI's Friend is the best book because I wrote it. But the other two books which I found on Amazon, they teach Python with game making combined. So it's not really drilling history and computer science logic into you, but it gives you pretty immediate results like teaching the snake how to go left and right with the keyboard. And a lot of times we associate computer science as something only smart people can do, which I believe that's totally wrong. Anyone can do computer science, even if you're not the brightest. Like, you just study, you learn it, it's fine. And this was a study done in a school where, like, there were two groups of kids. They were given two different articles. The first article was about a computer science student who achieved their computer science career through hard work and effort. And there was a second article which was given to the second group of kids, which was given to them. And it said that computer science was basically a genius. They were really talented and were born into that role. So after reading those two articles, the kids who read the article about hard work performed better on their test and confidence level on whether they want to do technology. So it's really important to show kids that anyone can do technology. It's not just reserved for smart people. No one's born into it. Anyone can learn it. And these are bad role models in computer science technology. I mean, they're smart, or they're supposed to look smart. I think these are some better role models. This was actually a workshop I taught at Black Girls Code, and that was actually a really fun workshop for me to teach. Like, all the girls, like, they haven't touched a computer before because they didn't have one at home, but like they learned how to go through the workshop really quickly. They were just missing that opportunity. And I think it's good to show your kids role models which are relatable. Like, they're people who are similar to them and they can achieve that. I find that schools can make introductions to computer science boring sometimes. And we all want our kids to go into computer science, but not all schools provide that curriculum either. So we can't exactly rely on schools. We'll have to introduce technology to our kids as parents ourselves. This is one of the assignments I had in high school for my computer science class. It's like get user input in your array and reverse it, or create a student and class roster objects, write a selection sort in Java. I mean, these are important to learn, but if this was the only thing you've seen related to technology, you probably wouldn't pursue it. Like, my first experience was more like games, creating your games through Scratch, and I found that more fun. And I know that once I learn these basics, I can create cool things, but this is just a process. It's not really a good introduction. This is a kids workshop where the kids are building robots with the Lego Mindstorm. And actually, these two kids are about my age now, and they've gone through computer science careers. So they've had positive introductions through workshops and different technology projects. So I think it's shown that it actually does help. And one common mistake when we're teaching programming to our kids ourselves is doing it for them and it takes away from their learning. Like this is a kids workshop photo where it's a Minecraft modding workshop and they have to go through like the IDE to modify code and compile it. It's a little bit too difficult for that kid because she's young and the volunteer has his hand on the mouse. So that kid probably is thinking about something else. This is a better example of another workshop. So Hippie Hacker was volunteering and helping this kid out, and he had his hands on the cane. So he was actually helping the kid only by explaining verbally, and the kid was like clicking on the mouse and the screen herself. So this makes sure that like she fully understands what she's being taught, and since she's done it once, she could more likely repeat it herself in the future. I find it helpful to find projects which relate to your kids' hobbies. So, like, if your kid enjoys doing their phone a lot, they like certain apps, maybe you can try recreating their favorite app if it's simple. Or if they enjoy video games, there's always code behind games. And even like social media or like YouTube, there's video editing and different software which goes behind that, which is a good start to technology. And the Lego Spike is a cool resource. There used to be the Lego Mindstorms, but this is like the newer version. I've seen this in schools and camps a lot, and my sisters tried this before. They basically build their own robot with Legos, and they code it with block programming, which is really cool. And the MBot's another good device. It supports both block coding and Python programming simultaneously. And it's a robot which you build with screws. And another way to relate to your kids' hobbies is if they like Minecraft or maybe a certain movie like Frozen, then on the Hour of Code website, they'll have lots of different themed programming projects. I've actually done a lot of these myself in high school. I think they're a lot of fun. And I think it's important to choose age-appropriate technologies. So I think Squishy Circuits is a fun project for really young kids. It's conductive Play-Doh, which they can make it light up with LEDs. And then you have Scratch and Block programming, which is good for slightly older kids. I'm going through this a little quickly because I'll be repeating this in more detail later. And the Raspberry Pi and Arduino is good for older kids. I've been teaching Raspberry Pi workshops for a long time, and I think that's a really good first computer for kids. Because the smartphones you can't code on. And a Raspberry Pi, like, even just getting into it, you have to type your username and password, or maybe even navigate using Linux. And I find that kids work the best when they're working together. It helps them problem solve together, and especially if you bring them to a workshop, if they have a friend with them, they don't feel as isolated. They have a friend with them, so it's fun. So pairs of two work the best. I've been teaching a lot of workshops, and they stop raising their hand as frequently when they're working together, since when they get stuck, maybe while they're asking for help, the other friend problem solves and maybe they'll figure it out. So I think there's more chance for like figuring out hard problems when kids work together. And I find that groups of threes are a little trickier because, I mean, in this example, one of the kids is a little younger, so she's a little left out because she's not as advanced. And she's also playing with her shoe. I think it's also important to let your kids pick their own career. Like, we can't force our kids to go into technology. It really has to be their decision. Like, if we tell them they must be like us, they'll do the opposite thing. So we have to show them a lot of positive influences and how technology can be fun and let them decide later on that actually technology is really cool and I want to do it. This is how a lot of us perceive programmers. They're on their computer all day, and maybe by the time they're off their computer, they're very tired. But actually, programming is behind a lot of jobs. Like, you can see today that, like, mechanical engineering, like skyscrapers, they're so big that there's a lot of computer modeling which goes behind it to make sure it's earthquake safe and safe. And even for like financial analysts, they're constantly using software written by developers to analyze stock market trends. And game designers, there's code behind that, and it's fun. And I've also, one of my friends' parents, they write code for medical equipment. Like, they're not doctors themselves, but I would say that their job is maybe even more important than a doctor because the code they write for the medical equipment goes to so many patients. So they're basically saving a lot of lives. And I know another person who's a lawyer in tech, and they don't do technology, they have a law degree, but when they first got into technology as a career, they were doing a lot of they were working for startup companies, helping them get settled in with law. And now they're with the Linux Foundation, helping with writing code of conducts. And they have to fully understand the technology, even so they're not in it. So even if your kid decides they don't want to do technology, they might just get pulled in it back later. And this is the new book which I'm writing. I just finished writing the chapters like 2 weeks ago, so it'll be released in a couple months. It's called Raising Young Coders, and it's meant to be for parents so they can learn how to teach their kids to get into technology. So I'm really excited for this. And I'll be showing you some of the projects which I have in my book. I'll just be giving you the general pictures, but the book itself has the actual detailed instructions. So this is the Squishy Circuits project, which I mentioned earlier. So I have two projects in the book. The first one is like a Pokeball. The way the squishy circuits work is there's conductive Play-Doh and non-conductive Play-Doh, and you put an LED through with a battery pack to give it power to create a circuit. So in this Pokeball example, the electric current goes to the red dough, and it goes through the LED, and then into the black dough, and back into the power block. And that non-conductive Play-Doh is a separator. If I didn't have that there, then I would short circuit it and the LED would not light up. The other example with the slimes is a slightly more complicated one. I actually wrapped the conductive Play-Doh inside the white non-conductive Play-Doh. So I have like the LED touching the bow and inside the Play-Doh to make it light up. And this is really good for young kids. Like, as soon as they can start mushing Play-Doh, you can actually build the circuit for them, and they'll start experimenting with it themselves. And paper circuits is good for slightly older kids. I find this project really cool because it combines arts and crafts and tech circuitry. It uses this copper foil tape, which basically acts like a wire, but it's easy to use since you peel it off like tape and paste it on paper. So in this example, it's a foldable paper. It's kind of like making a card. And when you push down on the fish, the ears light up. And you can see the internal circuitry on the left. So there's a place you put the battery and the LEDs, which are not on yet. You can build your own custom circuits using paper. This is also really good for like Halloween costumes or holiday cards. You can get really creative with this. And the Makerzoid is a good set. Earlier I mentioned that the Lego Spike is good, but it costs $500 USD, which is a lot. The Makerzoid is like a China version of the Lego Spike, but I've tested it myself and it's only like $100. It's more within my price range. And they've actually have a lot of projects on their app. So I was actually surprised myself at how much you could do with it. So for this I built a crab project and I programmed it how to walk left and right on its own and play some music. It has a distance sensor and a motor. And this is the MBot 2, which you saw earlier. For this project, I have it as a line follower. I think the best use case for the MBot is actually following lines. And it can also detect color. So when this heart track I built, when it passes over the yellow tape, it slows down. And when it passes over the green tape, it speeds up. I do this because when the MBot goes around the sharp turns, if it goes too fast, then it won't follow the track anymore. It'll slide off. And you can see that I programmed it using block coding, but the MBot also supports Python coding, and you can do a lot of complicated things with it. It also comes with a distance sensor. And I think what's cool about the MBot is, what separates it from other Arduino robot kits is it's much easier to build. You can build it in like an hour and then get to the coding really quickly. Sometimes I find with other kits, robot kits with a lot of wiring, like there's a lot of frustration involved to get the wires into the right pinholes. So it avoids that step. And this is the microbit. Maybe you guys have seen it before, but a lot of schools use this since it's affordable and can do a lot. And the microbit has a lot of sensors on it. I believe an accelerometer so you can tilt it, and 2 buttons. Even the gold pin logo is kind of like a button. It's a touch sensor. And I think it has a speaker, and if you have 2 microbits, they can talk to each other. So for my project, I have a Python example. I think it's a really good introduction to having kids code in Python, because block coding and simple Python isn't actually that different. Sometimes kids feel like they can only do block coding because that's the only thing they know, but I think it's important we show them some simple Python so that they know actually it's the same and I can do this. This is a Raspberry Pi project. You can see the Raspberry Pi on the left. It's a very small mini computer, and it's basically a graphics card, a processor, all the basics of a computer all in one. And it has some USB slots and power, so you still need to plug in your own peripherals and connect it to a monitor. So it's kind of a good basic intro to building your own computer, because computers are a little expensive to gather all the parts and build ourselves. And in this project, I have the Raspberry Pi connected to a breadboard. And with the breadboard, I connect different wires and LEDs. And to make the LEDs light up, you have to program it on the Raspberry Pi, like a computer. So there's some simple code to make the LEDs light up when you push the button. And I think it's also a good thing to take your kids to locally run kids workshops or different events, collaborative events for kids in technology. Like we had the J Focus for kids this Sunday, which was really great. But I think a lot of local schools or different programs will have this available too. So I want to show you the Phippy's AI Friend workshop. I actually taught this workshop at the J Focus for kids this Sunday. So it's like a storybook, like a picture book. And all the animals in this book are the CNCF mascots. If you've heard of KubeCon and Kubernetes, they're mildly related. So we have Phippy and Kamani in the ship, and they want to invite all their friends to the zebra's birthday party. And they go around Paris to invite all their friends, but they get very distracted. And you can also see there's creepers hiding in the page. So if your kids play Minecraft, they can find all the little creepers. This one is in the tree. So they invite their friend Tiago to the party. Kamani finds out they can't actually draw very well, and they're sad. And they invite Hazel to the party. And Kamani finds out that they don't actually look good in clothes, so they're a little sad about that too. And they visit the Notre Dame Cathedral to invite Ty to the party. And all the locations in this book are real places in Paris. So I think right now the Notre Dame Cathedral is actually burnt down in a fire, but they're busy restoring it. And Kamani tries singing with Aulina at the Louvre Museum. You can see the creeper on the bird. And Kamani gets really depressed because they compare themselves against their friends. And they feel like they can't do any of the skill sets which their friends can do. But since Kimani is an AI-powered machine, they're really good at seeing things in a picture. So they're the first one to find Z behind the shopping cart. And since it's a surprise birthday party, Kimani saves the party. So Kimani takes Phippy and they don't invite Z to the party. And then since they discovered that Kimani is really good at detecting things with AI, they're tasked with inviting all the friends to the ship and making sure that no creepers get on board. So I'm going to be showing you what the workshop is like. So this is the phippyai.com website. There's a page in the book which has instructions and directs you here. So this is what the instructions look like. I think the instructions are better for parents to read, and then you can teach your kids. And there's a Phippy AI template.sb3, which is a Scratch file. And the last button will go to the Scratch instance. So I'm going to load the Scratch template. And it should show me. So this is a special version of Scratch which I host on GitHub. It has these ML2 Scratch blocks which allow for AI training, and it's written using TensorFlow. So in one of the pages of these books, there's different characters which I'm going to scan and train it on. So the first character I'm going to train is Goldie, the Go-Gopher. And I'm going to train Goldie on label 3. And I'm going to check counts of label 3 so that I know how many times I train Goldie. So I hold Goldie up to the web camera and I take a few pictures. Each time I click train label 3, it increments it. And I can try moving the book closer and further to get more variance in model data. So I should have enough data. And it recognizes Goldie. But I need Goldie to actually board the ship. So I'm going to say when received label 3, Goldie should board the ship. So now Goldie knows how to board the ship. The problem we have now is I'm not holding the book and Goldie is still boarding the ship, you can see. So we have to also train the model on the room or my face so it has a base case so it knows when not to board Goldie. To do this, I'm going to train it on label 1. And I'll check this so I can see how many times I'm training it. So I'll click this a few times while I'm standing in front. Maybe a few times while I'm not standing in front. And now when I hold the book up, it should board Goldie. Next I'm going to train the creeper. I'll click on the creeper sprite and train it on label 2. So I find the creeper in the book and I train on it. Now Kimani recognizes there's a creeper, but it doesn't drop the creeper yet. So I need the blocks. So when it sees label 2, it'll drop the creeper. Now the creeper drops. And when it sees Goldie, it should board. And for training Phippy, the code is a little bit more complicated. I make this very incremental. So we start very basic and fun. We make boarding Goldie easy and dropping the creeper easy. But for training the creeper, there'll be an extra step. Phippy. So I'm training Phippy, but you can see that nothing has changed yet. So I need a when received label for Phippy should board the ship. Now Phippy boards, but you can see that Kimani doesn't say hi Phippy. Kimani doesn't even know that Phippy is there. So we need to go into Kimani sprite, and I'm just going to copy this code block and change the values. You can see that for the gopher, I already did it for you. And now when I put Phippy on, it says hi Phippy, and it adds the friends to the list. So this is just an example of a workshop you can do with your kids. So when you get to the end of the book, you have all the friends on the party. And you can see that it's the zebra's birthday party, but Kimani was also created that day, so it's Kimani's party too. And these are the links if you want to buy the books. That goes to the Phippy's AI Friend Amazon link. And the Raising Young Coders book is not out yet, but it'll be out in April. I think it's good to do this workshop with your kids. I mean, I showed it to you guys, but this is really meant for your kids, not you. And the organizers want the talk to be rated. So if you could take a moment to rate my talk. I think they want data on the talks so they know in the future. I would like to open this up to questions. So if you guys have questions for me.
Thank you, first of all. It was great for me. I was just about to sort of attempt this and teach my kids and using Scratch But what I struggle with is more pedagogical side of things, like how to calmly teach kids and like uh, because both parties most of the time gets frustrated and like how to deal with that I have no idea. Do you have any recommendations for that?
There's a few things you can try. Like, you can have your kid work with a friend, and they can problem solve together, and maybe both of them together can ask you for help. Another way is to have someone else teach your kids. Sometimes they learn better that way.
Thank you for a great talk. My son is only 2 years, so it's a bit early for some of this stuff. But do you have other suggestions of non-technological activities like
I think
games
your
or?
son is ready for squishy circuits.
Yeah, that's the
They
only
can mush
thing.
Play-Doh,
Yeah,
and you can put the LED in for them.
yeah. I will try that one. But do you have suggestions for other activities like games, like puzzles, or something that sort of stimulates programmatical thinking?
Um, I mean, I remember when I was 2 or 3, like, I watched my dad play video games, and sometimes he would give me the controller. So sometimes just early eye hand coordination can help.
Hey, was the workshop in the Chief Focus for Kids in English?
There were actually like 4 or 5 workshops, and I was given the students with the best English. But all the other classes were in Swedish.
No more questions? Yeah, one. Thanks for the great talk. So I have 2 sons, 7 and 11. They actually started programming very well, but then that was it. Then they stopped programming, and they are not curious enough to build something on their own. So any advices on that?
I think it might be good to spend time with them. Like, if they see doing programming as getting dad time, then that can be encouraging and make it a fun activity. And I also showed a lot of projects. So even though it's just programming, sometimes having a new project is like giving them a new toy, and that can spark their interest again.
Any more questions? No, I think we thank you then.